This season of your life is not a punishment, it is preparation, and even though it feels quiet, slow, confusing, and sometimes painfully lonely, it is shaping you into someone who can carry real love without losing yourself in it, because real love is not just about butterflies and late-night conversations and emotional highs. It is about emotional stability, spiritual maturity, healed wounds, clear boundaries, patience, trust, and the ability to give without emptying yourself. And right now, what feels like delay is actually divine development. What feels like isolation is actually insulation. What feels like rejection is often redirection, and what feels like silence is actually instruction. Because before you meet the person who will truly see you, choose you, and stay with you, you must become the version of yourself who no longer begs to be chosen, who no longer tolerates inconsistency, who no longer confuses attention with affection or chemistry with compatibility. And this season is teaching you that love is not something you chase, it is something you are prepared for, because when you are emotionally unprepared, even the right person will feel wrong, and when you are spiritually immature, even a blessing can look like a burden. So this time alone is not empty, it is intentional. It is teaching you how to sit with your own thoughts without needing distraction, how to soothe your own anxiety without needing constant reassurance, how to validate yourself instead of looking for validation in someone else's words. And that is powerful, because the version of you that needed someone to complete them could never sustain real love, but the version of you that knows they are already whole can build something lasting. And maybe you have cried in this season, maybe you have questioned why others seem to find love so easily while you are still waiting, maybe you have wondered if something is wrong with you. But nothing is wrong with you. What is happening is refinement. Your standards are being clarified, your heart is being strengthened, your patterns are being exposed, and your boundaries are being reinforced, because the kind of love you are praying for requires a stronger foundation than the kind of love you used to accept, and foundations are built slowly, deliberately, and often underground where no one sees the work being done. And just because no one sees your growth does not mean it is not happening. Just because you are single does not mean you are stuck. Just because you are waiting does not mean you are forgotten, because waiting is not wasting when it is shaping you into someone who can recognize red flags without romanticizing them, who can communicate needs without fear, who can walk away without guilt when respect is missing. And this season is revealing your emotional triggers so you can heal them instead of projecting them onto your future partner. It is showing you where you overgive and where you underspeak, where you settle and where you self-sabotage, and that awareness is not meant to shame you, it is meant to free you, because healed people love differently. They do not love from fear of abandonment, they do not love from scarcity, they do not love from trauma bonds, they love from security, and security is being built inside you right now even if it feels uncomfortable, because growth always stretches you before it strengthens you. And sometimes the loneliness you feel is not the absence of love but the withdrawal from unhealthy attachments that once distracted you from your purpose. And now that those distractions are gone, you are face to face with yourself, and that confrontation is holy, because you cannot bring an unhealed heart into a covenant-level love and expect peace. You cannot carry insecurity into a stable relationship and expect it not to create storms. So this season is teaching you emotional discipline. It is teaching you to pause before reacting, to reflect before assuming, to communicate before withdrawing, and these skills will protect your future relationship more than any romantic gesture ever could. and perhaps what feels like delay is actually protection from a connection that would have broken you at your current level of understanding, because sometimes the right person at the wrong time becomes the wrong person, and timing matters because maturity matters. And the love that is meant for you will require a version of you that is not desperate but discerning. Not anxious but aligned, not needy but nurturing, and alignment takes time. It takes shedding old beliefs about love. It takes unlearning the idea that chaos equals passion and inconsistency equals excitement. It takes realizing that peace is not boring, it is safe, and safety is sacred, and in this season you are learning to choose peace over intensity, depth over drama, clarity over confusion. And that shift alone is preparing you for something real, because real love will not feel like a roller coaster. It will feel like coming home, and you cannot appreciate a healthy home if you are addicted to emotional fireworks. So this quiet is detoxing you from unhealthy cravings, it is rewiring your expectations, it is reminding you that you deserve consistency, honesty, and effort without having to beg for it, and the more you internalize that truth, the less you will entertain half-hearted connections. And that is growth, even if it feels lonely, and yes, there will be nights when you wish someone was beside you, mornings when you wish you had a good morning text, moments when you wish you could share your wins and your fears with someone special, but use this time to become that safe place for yourself, because the healthiest relationships are built by two people who are not trying to escape loneliness but are choosing partnership from wholeness, and you are being trained in wholeness right now, trained to stand firm in your values, trained to trust your intuition, trained to recognize when something feels off and honor that feeling instead of dismissing it, and that intuition will guard your heart in the future, because love should not require you to betray yourself, and this season is teaching you self-loyalty. It is teaching you that your needs matter, that your voice matters, that your boundaries are not too much, and the more comfortable you become with who you are alone, the more magnetic you become to someone who is secure enough to love you as you are. And maybe the reason this season feels longer than expected is because the transformation is deeper than you realize, because you are not just being prepared to love someone else, you are being prepared to be loved well, and being loved well requires vulnerability without fear, honesty without manipulation, and commitment without games, and those qualities must first exist within you before you can sustain them with another. So every time you choose self-respect over attention, every time you choose growth over comfort, every time you choose patience over panic, you are rehearsing for real love, and rehearsals are not glamorous but they are necessary, because when the curtain rises and the right person enters your life, you will not be scrambling to learn lessons you should have learned in solitude. You will be ready, steady, secure, and that readiness will change everything, because instead of asking will they leave you will know I am worthy, instead of asking do they like me you will ask do our values align, instead of shrinking to be accepted you will stand confidently in your truth, and that confidence is attractive in a way that desperation never is, and understand that real love is not just found, it is built, and you are being given the tools to build it. Brick by brick, with trust, communication, forgiveness, emotional intelligence, and spiritual grounding, and none of those tools are developed in constant distraction, they are developed in stillness, reflection, prayer, journaling, therapy, self-awareness, accountability, and honest conversations with yourself. And while others may be rushing into relationships just to fill a void, you are being refined so that when love comes, it adds to your life instead of becoming your entire life, and that distinction matters, because love should complement your purpose, not consume your identity, and this season is reconnecting you with your identity, your dreams, your calling, your passions, your standards, your non-negotiables, and all of that clarity will protect your heart from settling, because when you know who you are, you no longer accept what contradicts you, and maybe you have lost people in this season. Maybe connections faded, maybe someone you thought was the one walked away. But sometimes loss is not punishment, it is pruning, and pruning makes room for healthier growth, because holding on to the wrong person can delay the right one, and letting go is often the bravest act of faith, and faith is trusting that what is meant for you will not miss you, that what is aligned will arrive, that what is real will remain, and while you wait, you are not stagnant, you are evolving. And evolution always feels uncomfortable before it feels empowering, and one day you will look back at this season and realize it was the chapter that strengthened your heart, clarified your standards, healed your insecurities, and deepened your trust in divine timing, and you will be grateful you did not force something premature, you will be grateful you did not chase what was not chasing you, you will be grateful you learned to sit with yourself instead of settling for less. Because the love that is coming will require emotional capacity, and capacity is built in seasons like this. Quietly, consistently, intentionally, and so instead of asking when will it happen, ask who am I becoming, because who you are becoming determines what you can sustain, and real love is not just about finding someone amazing, it is about becoming someone prepared, and preparation is happening right now in ways you cannot always see but will eventually understand, so trust this season, embrace this growth. Honor this solitude, because it is not empty, it is essential, and the love you desire is not being denied, it is being prepared, and so are you. What you must understand in this continuation of your journey is that preparation for real love is not only about healing from the past but also about building the internal architecture required to sustain a future that is bigger than your previous expectations, because many people desire partnership yet remain emotionally structured for survival rather than stability. And this season is dismantling your survival patterns so you can build secure attachment instead of anxious attachment, conscious communication instead of silent resentment, and emotional responsibility instead of blame, and that reconstruction takes time because it requires you to confront the narratives you unconsciously adopted about love, the beliefs that told you love must be earned through sacrifice, that loyalty means tolerating disrespect, that passion must feel chaotic to be real. And as these narratives are exposed, you may feel disoriented, almost as if you do not recognize yourself anymore, but that is evidence of growth, because evolution always feels unfamiliar before it feels empowering, and you are learning to separate fantasy from foundation, intensity from intimacy, and attention from intentionality. And this discernment is crucial because real love is not proven through grand gestures but through consistent character, through someone choosing you not only when it is convenient but when it is costly, not only when it feels good but when it requires effort, and to receive that kind of love you must first believe you deserve consistency, you must first stop romanticizing potential and start evaluating patterns. And that shift in perspective is part of this season's curriculum, because you cannot step into covenant-level love while still entertaining convenience-level connections. And perhaps what feels like emptiness right now is actually space being cleared for alignment, because overcrowded hearts cannot recognize healthy opportunities. And sometimes the reason nothing is happening is because everything that is not meant for you has finally been removed, leaving you in a quiet that feels unfamiliar but is deeply necessary, and in this quiet you are learning emotional regulation, the ability to sit with discomfort without reacting impulsively, the ability to process feelings without projecting them, the ability to communicate needs without ultimatums, and these skills will become the pillars of your future. Relationship, because love without regulation becomes chaos, love without accountability becomes manipulation, love without boundaries becomes exhaustion, and you are being strengthened so that when love arrives, you will not abandon yourself in the process of choosing someone else, and that is critical because self-abandonment is often disguised as devotion, but real devotion never requires you to shrink, silence, or sacrifice your identity, and this season is teaching you that your identity is sacred, your peace is valuable, your standards are valid, and as you internalize these truths, your energy shifts, your tolerance changes, your discernment sharpens, and you begin to notice that what once impressed you now concerns you, what once excited you now exhausts you, what once confused you now clarifies itself quickly, and that awareness is protection, because you are no longer operating from loneliness but from alignment, and alignment attracts differently, it filters differently, it responds differently, and while others may rush into temporary comfort, you are being positioned for lasting compatibility. Because compatibility is not just shared chemistry but shared values, shared vision, shared maturity, and shared commitment to growth, and this season is aligning you with your own vision so you do not compromise it later. It is teaching you to ask deeper questions, to observe actions more than words, to prioritize emotional safety over surface-level attraction, and perhaps the greatest lesson you are learning is patience, not passive waiting but active trust, the kind of patience that continues building a fulfilling life even before partnership arrives. Because when you stop pausing your life for a future person, you become more attractive to the right person, and that attraction is not about appearance but about wholeness, about the quiet confidence that says I am complete on my own but open to sharing my completeness with someone equally whole, and this is why the season feels transformative, because you are no longer seeking someone to rescue you from loneliness but someone to walk beside you in purpose, and purpose-driven love is different. It is less dramatic but more durable, less performative but more profound, less impulsive but more intentional, and it requires emotional depth that can only be cultivated in solitude, and so every journal entry you write, every boundary you enforce, every tear you release, every moment you choose growth over regression is contributing to the infrastructure of a relationship that will not collapse under pressure, because storms will come in any partnership. Disagreements will happen, misunderstandings will arise, but two prepared hearts handle storms differently than two unhealed hearts, and you are being shaped into someone who responds rather than reacts, who listens rather than assumes, who forgives without forgetting their worth, and that balance is powerful, because love without wisdom becomes self-destruction, but love with wisdom becomes sanctuary, and you are being prepared to create sanctuary with someone, a space where honesty is safe, vulnerability is welcomed, accountability is mutual, and growth is continuous, and sanctuary cannot be built by someone who is still afraid of being alone, so this season is removing that fear, slowly but surely, teaching you that your value is not dependent on relationship status, that your identity is not diminished by singleness, that your timeline is not inferior because it looks different from others, and comparison is losing its grip on you because you are beginning to trust your own journey. And trust is foundational, because without trust you will sabotage what you prayed for. You will question sincerity, you will doubt consistency, You will anticipate abandonment even in safety, and this season is dismantling that anticipation of loss so that when real love arrives you can receive it without suspicion, embrace it without fear, and nurture it without insecurity. And perhaps the most beautiful part of this preparation is that it is not only about who you will meet but about who you are becoming. Because the person who enters your life will not complete you, they will complement you, and compliments enhance what already exists, they do not create it from nothing, so you are building substance now, building emotional depth, spiritual grounding, intellectual clarity, and personal stability, and all of that substance will make your future love richer, deeper, more resilient, because two people who have faced themselves honestly bring transparency into relationship rather than masks. And masks always suffocate intimacy, but honesty sustains it, and so if this season feels stretching, if it feels exposing, if it feels slower than you hoped, understand that slow growth produces strong roots, and strong roots support lasting love, and what you are being given is not a rushed romance but a refined readiness, not temporary excitement but sustainable intimacy, and when it finally unfolds you will recognize that nothing was wasted, not the tears, not the delays, not the solitude, not the lessons, because every moment was shaping you into someone capable of receiving and sustaining real love without losing yourself in the process, and that is the kind of love worth waiting for. And as this journey continues, you begin to realize that preparation for real love is not only about becoming emotionally stable but about becoming spiritually aligned, mentally disciplined, and deeply self-aware, because real love does not just test your feelings, it tests your character, your patience, your humility, and your ability to choose commitment even when emotions fluctuate. And this season is quietly strengthening those muscles within you so that when love is no longer just an idea but a daily responsibility, you will not crumble under its weight, because many people desire the wedding but are not prepared for the marriage, they crave the romance but are not ready for the responsibility, they want to be chosen but have not yet learned how to choose wisely. And this time in your life is teaching you discernment at a level you did not previously possess. It is slowing you down so you stop confusing urgency with destiny, attraction with alignment, or loneliness with love, and in that slowing down you are discovering parts of yourself that were once ignored, dreams that were postponed, passions that were silenced, wounds that were buried. And now as those things resurface, you are being invited to address them rather than distract yourself from them through temporary connections. Because distraction delays development, and development is essential for durability, and the love you are being prepared for is not fragile, it is not surface level, it is not built on constant reassurance or emotional dependency. It is built on two individuals who have faced their shadows, taken responsibility for their triggers, and chosen growth over ego, and ego is often what destroys relationships before they even have the chance to mature. Ego refuses to apologize, refuses to listen, refuses to compromise, and this season is softening your ego, while strengthening your confidence, teaching you that humility is not weakness and that vulnerability is not risk when it is placed in safe hands, but you must first become safe within yourself, safe enough to admit when you are wrong, safe enough to express when you are hurt, safe enough to communicate without manipulation or silent punishment. And that safety is being cultivated right now in the quiet moments where you choose reflection instead of reaction, growth instead of grievance, and faith instead of fear, because fear will always rush you into something that feels urgent but unstable, while faith allows you to wait for something steady and aligned, and alignment requires timing, and timing requires trust, and trust is being deepened in you through every delay, every unanswered question, every closed door that once disappointed you but later protected you, and when you look back you will see that what did not work out was not a loss but a lesson, not rejection but redirection, because had those connections succeeded, they would have met a version of you that was still tolerating less than you deserved, still shrinking to keep someone interested, still ignoring intuition to avoid being alone, and now you are no longer willing to betray yourself for temporary affection, you are no longer impressed by inconsistency disguised as mystery, you are no longer attracted to emotional unavailability disguised as independence, and that clarity is proof that this season is working in you even when it feels slow, because transformation rarely announces itself loudly, it happens quietly, subtly, through changed reactions, raised standards, and deeper peace, and peace is one of the clearest indicators that you are aligning with real love, because real love does not create constant anxiety about where you stand, it does not make you question your worth, it does not demand you perform for approval, it provides stability, reassurance through actions, and mutual effort that feels balanced, rather than draining, and you are being prepared to recognize that kind of balance, to appreciate it, to reciprocate it, and to protect it, because once you experience healthy love you will realize how unnecessary chaos always was, and perhaps that is why this season required you to detach from patterns that once felt normal but were actually harmful, because normal is not always healthy, familiar is not always safe, and comfortable is not always correct, and growth often requires stepping away from familiarity into faith, trusting that what is ahead of you is greater than what you left behind, and as you continue in this preparation, you are also learning interdependence instead of codependence, understanding that real love involves two strong individuals choosing partnership, not two incomplete individuals clinging to each other out of fear, and that shift changes everything. Because now you are not looking for someone to rescue you from boredom or validate your existence, you are looking for someone who enhances your already meaningful life, someone whose presence multiplies peace rather than divides attention, someone whose vision complements yours rather than competes with it, and this clarity is powerful because it filters out what is not aligned before it ever becomes emotionally entangled, saving you from unnecessary heartbreak, and while it may feel like you are walking alone right now, you are actually walking forward into emotional wealth, into relational wisdom, into spiritual maturity that will make your future partnership not only romantic but resilient, and resilience is what sustains love long after the excitement of the beginning fades, because beginnings are easy, but building something that lasts requires intention, forgiveness, compromise, shared growth, and daily choice, and you are being prepared for the daily choice of love, not just the feeling of it. And that preparation includes learning how to disagree respectfully, how to navigate differences without seeing them as threats, how to hold space for another person's perspective without abandoning your own, and these are not skills developed in constant company, they are cultivated in solitude where self-awareness sharpens and emotional intelligence deepens, and so if you sometimes feel stretched, challenged, or even frustrated with the pace of your life, remember that pace is protecting you from premature attachment, from connections that would have distracted you from purpose, from relationships that looked appealing but lacked depth, because depth requires readiness, and readiness is exactly what is being formed in you, layer by layer, decision by decision, prayer by prayer, and one day when love arrives in a way that feels calm yet powerful, steady yet passionate, intentional yet effortless, you will realize that this season was never about absence, it was about alignment. It was about becoming someone who could receive love without self-sabotage, who could sustain intimacy without fear of abandonment, who could build partnership without losing individuality, and in that realization you will feel gratitude for every delay, every lesson, every lonely night that strengthened your relationship with yourself, because loving yourself well was never separate from preparing for real love, it was the foundation of it, and now as you stand more grounded, more secure, more patient, and more discerning than before, understand that you are no longer simply waiting for love, you are ready for it, and readiness transforms waiting into expectancy, transforms loneliness into growth, and transforms this entire season into the beautiful preparation it has always been.